and we will end our reliance on China once and for all. We'll make our medical supplies right here in the United States. We will enact fair trade deals that create American jobs and grow American wages. We are going to bring our companies back home where they should be, and I've been doing a lot of it, but we are going to do it at a level that nobody ever thought possible. We will rapidly return to full employment, soaring wages, and record prosperity. Joe Biden has spent 47 years shipping North Carolina jobs to China and other countries, you know that. And I've spent the last 4 years bringing jobs back to our country. We never had so many jobs. We're up to 160 million jobs. We were never anywhere close. We got up to 160 million, and we were never anywhere close to that. Here in North Carolina, voting is already underway. On November 3rd, Americans will decide whether we will quickly return to record prosperity or whether we allow the same left-wing extremists that have no idea what they're doing. Biden spent the last 47 years betraying African-American voters. He betrayed them. Look at 1994. Take a look at that. He betrayed them, what he did to them. He closed the factories in Baltimore and sent them to Beijing. They were all sent to Beijing. So many people went there. They went to all parts of the world, but a lot went to Beijing. He shuttered the plants in Chicago and sent them to Shanghai. Unlike the previous administration, under my administration, we put America first. Joe Biden devoted his career to offshoring your jobs, throwing open your borders, dragging us into endless foreign wars along with some of his other friends, and surrendering our children's future to countries like China. Remember this, very simple to remember. If Biden wins, China wins. It's as simple as that.
Well, welcome to War Room Pandemic Wednesday, September the 9th, the year of our Lord 2020, broadcasting live from Capitol Hill. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam on the John Fredericks Radio Network, America's Voice, on G News and GTV, subtitled in Mandarin and blown through the CCP's firewall. And later on in the day on Newsmax TV, you're in the War Room. Stephen K. Bannon joining us down the line. Steve.
Yeah, Raheem, we're live today from both New York City, the heart of the greatest city in the world, and obviously Washington, D.C. I got to tell you, it is pretty stunning after Labor Day that New York City is absolutely as close to being closed as possible. I'm actually pretty shocked about what's going on. But in the president's now, I think, push for re-election, we're starting to see the framing, I think, of the major issues. Raheem, I'd love to get you and Jack's opinion. You know, we've talked about this, China and the CCP. If Biden wins, China wins. I think if it's Biden wins, the CCP wins, because that's Joe Biden's partner. But I mean, do you guys think it's framed on that? It's framed on jobs and the economy, and it's framed on safety / law and order. Those are the three, I think, verticals you're going to see driving. And, you know, we just took a compilation of the speeches from your state, North Carolina, and some of the other comments the president's been taking. I know that along with Miles Guo, Raheem, you're an action guy. What do you guys think of this framing? I think it's pretty intense, and now it's in every speech, and he's also connecting dots. You know, they ship the jobs to Shanghai out of Chicago and out of Baltimore and out of North Carolina. So he's connecting dots on economic nationalism and populism.
Go ahead, Jack.
Well, no, Steve, you're seeing this, I think, all across the country in various areas. There was a poll done yesterday about the declining viewership of the NBA, which is significant. It's roughly around 40%. And the number three reason, number one, it's become over politicized, but the number three reason, 19% of NBA viewers say that their support for communist China has turned them off of watching professional basketball. So the average American, the deplorable out there, is starting to make the connections, and Donald Trump is highlighting them. I want him to do it.
That's such an important buried lead. No media companies brought that up. I want you to walk the audience through this. This is absolutely, when you sent it to me, I found it stunning. that much traction. Go back through what this poll showed on this basic implosion of ratings for the NBA, and what was one of the top reasons?
One of the top reasons was because it is becoming apparent to the American people that the NBA has become a running dog organization for the Chinese Communist Party. They are lecturing the American people on our lack of freedoms. They are lecturing us on racial justice. They are lecturing us on all sorts of things. And yet, here they are, tools of a slave regime inside China. They will do anything not to upset Chairman Xi and the Communist Party of China. We saw this with the Mavericks coach. We've seen this over and over again. Yet they have no problem sticking their thumb into the eye of the American people. And I think it's high time that we start recognizing, or I think it's high time for the Democrats, quite frankly, that they start recognizing that they have lost the narrative with the average Joe, because the average Joe knows that his local businesses all got shut down. He knows his family business is taking it on the chin, and they're trying to turn it into a health safety issue and some sort of communal effort to save America. Listen, the average American guy knows that communist China is the reason that he's on his knees right now. And when they stand up, they are not going to be looking at communist China the same way ever again. I think now is the time to strike. These people are in big trouble. They just had a typhoon that is hitting northeast China right now. This is China's breadbasket. This is 20% of their food production right there. There are stories of all of the cornfields laying on their sides. They can't even rescue it that way because it's not ripe yet. And if they can stand some of it back up, guess what? It's going to be covered with mold. These people are in serious trouble, and we need to, I believe, acknowledge, and I'll say it again, I said it yesterday, food is a strategic asset, just like the PPEs, and we are going to start seeing famine around the world. Look at Venezuela. Look at Africa. China's pretending they don't have a problem. In my opinion, right now, they are stockpiling food for the future, and I don't think that we should participate in, once again, rescuing the Communist Chinese Party from their own problems, from their own errors, just like Nixon did 50 years ago. And these people are basically catcalling the president. In the Global Times today, and I apologize for going on so far, Taiwan News is talking about potential meeting with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross and Keith Kroc, the Undersecretary of State for Economic and Growth. And so China is very, very upset about this. And China came out with an editorial in the Global Times. This is as if Chairman Xi wrote it himself. And he said, it says, American officials planning to visit Taiwan should think twice. Oh, also, I've got to give one thing. They said that the Taiwanese people should never trust the Americans. Have they forgotten the history of 50 years ago, specifically referencing Nixon, Kissinger's kowtowing to the CCP? This is what they say. American officials planning to visit Taiwan should think twice. You should understand the weight of the Taiwan question in the hearts of the Chinese people. For Americans who dare to provoke China on the Taiwan question, the Chinese people will remember you for a lifetime. Do not come to China anymore. You are not welcome here. You and your affiliated companies will have to stop doing business with China and face sanctions. You will face consequences. This is a threat from the mouthpiece of the Communist Party of China toward American business, toward Wilbur Ross, toward our relationship with Taiwan. And I got to tell you, American people, every one of you should be angered. Everybody should be posting a Taiwan flag on their Twitter page. Call their bluff. I can't visit there? Well, guess what? Maybe we don't send the corn barges over to visit. Excuse me.
Look, obviously, we got to be very careful about when you're dealing with food, particularly in famine situations. But I think your point's well taken. Is the Chinese Communist Party understands the heat's on them. Even they're forcing Joe Biden to actually respond to this. Joe Biden, who's friendship with Xi, he brags about all the time until he gets into campaign stops up in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. This couldn't get more serious. I think as this campaign heats up, China and the CCP are going to get to be a central issue, particularly about economic nationalism, where the jobs went. And I want to make sure our audience understands. Now you're seeing all the globalists are all going to pretend like they're nationalists, they're economic nationalists over the next 60 days. What I'd like to do is ask ABN and Vish if we can tee up the Richard Haas. Let's go right to Morning Joe. If you want to see what the globalists think, you want to see the conventional wisdom in the swamp or the conventional wisdom of the permanent political class, every morning you should watch Morning Joe, because that's where you got it. Richard Haas, obviously you talked about it a lot. Let's hear Richard Haas on Morning Joe.
This will be the defining relationship of this era, just like the U.S.-Soviet relationship was the defining relationship for 4 decades of the Cold War. The challenge for the U.S. and for China is going to be, how do we structure the competition in ways that don't spill over into direct conflict over Taiwan or over the South China Sea? How do we structure the inevitable competition so it doesn't preclude or rule out cooperation, say, on climate change, or on dealing with the North Korean nuclear challenge, or in dealing with stability in Afghanistan? So we're looking at a relationship that's going to have multiple personalities. And this is going to place tremendous, real premium on the quality of foreign policy, on the quality of statecraft, because it's not going to be one-dimensional. It's not going to be one-directional. We're going to have to find a way to cooperate on Tuesdays and Thursdays, yet compete the rest of the time. And we're going to have real disagreements, but can we still limit the disagreement? So again, like it worked out with the Soviets, it doesn't spill over into direct conflict. And can we shape our relationship overall so we can still cooperate, say, on global public health? It serves our interest to do that, even if we disagree fundamentally on the South China Sea. That will be the challenge, and how well that challenge is met will probably, as much of anything, determine the character of the next 50 years of this era of history.
That right there is what Ronald Reagan stood up to when he became president of the United States. He's against the Soviets. That's nothing but mumbo jumbo. Right there with Richard Haas. You follow that, that's the road to perdition. This is his typical party at Davos, permanent political class. The reason we're in the situation we are today with the CCP virus here in China, the senior cadre of the Communist Party lying about everything, right? You can't even go now to Taiwan on a business trip. Our Secretary of Commerce and one of the undersecretaries of State for Economic Development can't even go to Taiwan for a meeting, or they're saying they're going to shut down. They're dictating to the United States what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. You follow Richard Haas, and you're just going to get more of the disastrous foreign policy we've gotten in the first half of this, or the first 20 years of this century already, right? Absolute defeatism, unending wars. I mean, this is what President Trump's fighting. Richard Haas is kind of the voice of the globalists. And you heard right there the mumbo jumbo. How about this, Richard Haas? We win, they lose. You need to confront the Chinese Communist Party. They're the enemy of the Chinese people. They're an illegitimate regime. They are the enemies of the United States. You know, Miles Gross says, hey, CCP lied, Americans died. What about this? How about genocide? They've already killed 180,000 of your fellow countrymen, and according to reports, it could be 400,000 by the end of the year. So it's absolutely incredibly outrageous. I know we got a minute left. Raheem, let's take it a break. Hashtag war and pandemic. We've got a packed show today. We're going to talk about election security and the plot against the president to steal his victory on November 3rd. We're going to deep into that. We've got more about China later. We got about the famines, the vaccines, pandemic, everything today. A packed show. Darren Beattie's going to be next. Back to you, Raheem.
Thanks, Steve. And, I think it bodes saying that while the president was really robust on China last night and the rallies and yesterday all day and has been ramping up, I don't think we've quite seen anything yet. I think if the Biden camp thinks that this is about as rough as the attacks are going to get, they've got another thing coming. You're going to see from the Trump campaign a real ratcheting up, I think, on the China stuff. But we'll be here for it. We'll be covering it. We'll be bringing you the best clips here on America's Voice and hashtag War Room Pandemic. John Fredericks and beyond. We'll be back after a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
That was a historically close election in a state that mattered to tip the Electoral College. The results were quickly canvassed, and the recount activity began really 3 days after Election Day. What we're talking about in 2020 is the onslaught of absentee ballots that you mentioned. That is going to postpone the count a good deal. A number of states are allowing ballots to be received either 3 days or a week, or in some cases a couple of weeks after Election Day, that means there won't be the final tallies. So I'm not sure we're in recount territory in this election. No reason to think the fickle finger of recount fate is going to point more in this election cycle than others. But we will have all the deadlines for beginning the process of finalizing the results pushed back a good deal. What's interesting about this cycle and concerning is that you do have the hard deadlines in the Constitution for the end of the president's term and for the meeting of the Electoral College on December 14th. And this delay in getting final certified results can really bump into those deadlines in a way that we just made in Florida in 2000.
All right, so no hanging chads. Thank you. At least we have that nightmare. Well,
welcome back to the War Room. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon. Steve?
This is how it works. Ginsburg, he was the election official back in, the top election lawyer in 2000 during the recount. Remember, we had asked Pasquale on yesterday. That was one county. It was Broward County. It was a couple of precincts. Okay, and it took up to almost December 14th, I think, before Al Gore conceded. Now you're going to have Ed Pasquale broke some big news yesterday. I think it was Raheem, 800,000 requests or potential requests already in Broward and Palm Beach County. Now, they have about 2 million registered voters. They voted about 70%, one of the highest, I think, percentages in the country. So if you look at what 800,000 will be of that, it's a huge percentage of that. But if you take 40, they think 40% of the vote is going to be mail-in vote. We're thinking it was 130 million votes basically in 2016. People are talking about up to 140 million, 150 million potential votes this year. You're talking what, Raheem? 60 million votes plus? They got to be counted. Right? This is all set for a fiasco. If you listen to War Room Pandemic and the guys at the National Pulse, people over Revolver, this is going to be in now your mind. You understand that Morning Joe today, big revelation about the Electoral College, about all the certification. This is going down. This is why we say there's 52 in a wake up for the 53 in a wake up for the election, but really 132 in a wake up to really Victory Day, because Donald J. Trump will not be named the winner of the 2020 election until the day before, I think the evening before the inauguration on the 20th. This is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest fiasco in American history. This is a plot out in the open. We're not conspiracy theory guys. We never have been, right? This is a plot out in the open to steal an election from a sitting president of the United States. And these people are not shy about it. All the information is out there. I counted something, I think 30 articles yesterday about this. The intensity is building up on the left. Now the right starting to get engaged. I've been 24 hours on the phone with people all over the country. We have volunteers. And remember, for the listeners at home, we're going to bring Darren Beattie here in a second from Revolver. But for the viewers at Newsmax and AVN, on G News, GTV, if you're an American citizen, and for everybody on the John Fredericks Radio Network, everybody getting us on Facebook, remember, own your vote, okay? Number one, volunteer for a get out the vote effort. By the way, for the Democrats that listen to Bernie guys, that we haven't convinced you yet on this to give Trump a open hearing. If you're a Democrat, then do this, but do your citizenship. But also, people should volunteer as poll watchers. But most importantly, you should be signing up today to be an election official. Not in the room, not in the deal. And this is what it's going to come down to. Another huge breaking story on Revolver. They've been all over this. Raheem, we've got Darren Beattie. You guys are experts on what are called color revolutions. At first people thought, oh, these guys got tinfoil hats, but you see how this plays out, and you particularly see how it's playing out on the left. They're quite proud of who they're pulling together in their alliance. By the way, Ginsburg today, this op-ed in the Washington Post, they said, oh, this is not going to be a big deal. This is, there's very little voter fraud. And then he goes immediately, and he basically says he's not going to help the president, not going to be part of this. And what did he do? He's immediately on Morning Joe. Okay, I'm going to make a call here, Raheem. I think we're going to see in the next few days Ginsburg named as a paid contributor at CNN or MSNBC. I'm just CBS News or ABC. I'm just throwing that out there, just as a random possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, quite evidently, that's what he's auditioning for with this. Auditioning for the Jen Rubin underling position at the Washington Post opinion section as well. Steve, I want to bring Darren in on this as well now, but you hit on something really important and really interesting for more external observers, but really critical for American citizens as well. You said that there may not be a call until the day before the inauguration. I think that's absolutely right, and I think people are going to have to realize that this is going to make the Bush v. Gore thing look minuscule and just like a tiny little blip. It's also going to make more fractious elections, like the 1876 ones that the Transition Integrity Project keep banging on about, look potentially smaller than the fracas you will have on the result on the back of all of this. I pronounce the word fracas like you do, Steve.
This is be the greatest constitutional crisis. This is going to be the greatest crisis of democracy in the history of our republic. But not even going to be a question. We're going to get into the polling later, tightening up. But trust me, folks, starting on the evening of November 3rd, when President Trump's up in the Electoral College vote across the country, right? This is why they shipped all the ballots out to California today. They want to run up the score in these progressive left-wing states to make sure, he's won the popular vote. But let's get Darren on here. We're going to spend the next couple of segments going through this. This is the most important thing in your life right now, if you're interested in politics, is what's going to happen post the vote.
Darren, want you to walk us through this Revolver exclusive. Meet Norm Eisen, legal hatchet man and central operative in the color revolution against President Trump. Darren Beattie, welcome to the show. Walk us through it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. This is indeed the most important topic for all political observers, and indeed all Americans should know this. There are many dimensions to the story. I probably won't be able to cover all of them, and so I encourage everyone, go to revolver.news, read the whole story. It's the most important thing you'll read today, this week, maybe even this month. Share it with everyone. So what is the story? For a long time, we've been hearing about a coup against President Trump, and this is absolutely true. There has been a coup in place really since he was elected in 2016, if not earlier. But the coup, the word coup, although accurate, is vague. What these series of articles at revolver.news does is provide a mental model, a heuristic, to more concretely understand exactly what is going on, exactly what is unfolding before our very eyes, and that is called the color revolution model. Now, very quickly, for those in your audience who may not have heard this term, not all coups are created the same. There are different tactics and different strategies. One strategy might be completely overt, interventionist, brutal Iraq war model, where you just send troops in and remove the target regime. There's another model called the color revolution model, which U.S. government and allied NGOs have preferred to use principally against Eastern European countries, target rulers that they don't like there. And instead of overt sending in troops, this involves a familiar combination of questioning the democratic legitimacy of their target leader through contested election and mass demonstrations of civil disobedience and protests, which they call in every case peaceful protests. Of course, they're not always, or at least ever, peaceful, but the violence of the protesters and the mass demonstrations precipitate a crackdown from the authorities, which are then used to undermine the target regime. Now, where does Norm Eisen, this character from the Revolver.news story, come in? Well, the thesis is quite simple. Have you ever noticed that so many of the key figures going after Trump, particularly in the impeachment, have been or are associated with Eastern Europe in some type of diplomatic post? Why is that? Well, the answer is it's the same people, these regime change experts who have experience running this color revolution model overseas. It's the same exact people running the same playbook, the same model against Trump. Same people, same playbook. And the Revolver.news article argues that no one illustrates this thesis better than Norm Eisen. If you'd like to interject, That's fine. I'm happy to go on and tell you guys more about Norm Eisen and exactly why he's one of the most important figures in the events unfolding before our very eyes.
Well, Darren, we've got about a minute left in this segment here, so why don't you start us off? If you can hold over the break, that would be great, and continue going on that as well. Our guest is Darren Beattie. He's walking us through this Revolver.news story. Darren, just give us a little tease in these 30 seconds, and then we'll bring you back.
Very quickly, this fellow Norm Eisen, an overlooked participant in this transition integrity project that you, National Pulse, have been covering so well. Norm Eisen was involved, and guess what? I say same playbook, same people. Norm Eisen wrote a color revolution manual literally called The Playbook. So more about that when we get after the break.
All right, great. Thanks, Darren Beattie, Stephen K. Bannon, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam. Here in the War Room, I want everybody to make sure you are not just paying very close attention. I know a lot of this can seem in the weeds. That this is going to be your lives until January the 20th. You need to be paying very close attention to what is happening to the Republic, if you can keep it. Remember, Benjamin Franklin said, we'll be right back. Darren Beattie will tell us how we can keep it here on War and Pandemic after this break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
One of the things that I think we and other media need to start doing is preparing the American people that there's nothing illegitimate about this election taking additional days or even weeks to make sure that all of the votes are counted. In fact, that might be important to make sure that this is a legitimate and fair election. So we're going to do a bunch of different messaging around that just to make sure that people know that that's normal. So if one of the candidates in any of the races claims victory before there's a consensus result, then we're going to add some informational context to that post directly, saying that there's no consensus result yet. I think that this is important because there is, unfortunately, I think, a heightened risk of civil unrest in the period, between voting and a result being called or after that. And I just think that we need to be doing everything that we can to reduce the chances of violence or civil unrest in the wake of this election.
If that were to happen, would Facebook be blamed in part?
Well, I can't speak to what other people would do, but I think we're trying to make sure that we do our part to make sure that that none of this is organized on Facebook. We want to make sure that none of that stuff is happening on our services. But the country is very charged right now. So I think regardless of what we do, there's some chance that this happens across the country. I just want to make sure that we do our part to not contribute to.
Steve, that's Mark Zuckerberg there. I mean, we called it. We said that weeks and weeks ago. Remember, you specifically pulled out that comment from Vox, I think it was, talking about how it would be Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch on the TV broadcast side, but it would be Mark Zuckerberg on the digital media side who would have to kind of fall into line with the Transition Integrity Project and their demands that the media plays their game, Steve.
So the media hadn't really been playing this up. That was pretty shocking, and particularly shocking in that that's the cyborg right there of Mark Zuckerberg. He laid it out right there on Axios, right there with Alan. Exactly what they're going to do. Remember, the lawyer set the predicate the day before and saying, "Hey, we're not going to run political ads in the week run up to the election. We're not going to call, and we're not going to support any voices that actually called the election on election night." And then he lays out the whole program right there. We need to socialize. We need to start to socialize this with the American people. That it's okay to have election week. It's okay to this thing just go on and on and on. So now you see the whole plots coming out. It's all out in the open. We're connecting dots. Remember, the reason we started the show, and one of the things we try to do here on impeachment, war room impeachment, we did it, war room pandemic, and now in this kind of extended version of pandemic, is first get the nomenclature down. so you understand what these ideas are and kind of understand what they mean. The second is talk about process, right? About process. What's the process that these ideas come together in? The last is critical path, to let you understand. Everybody's been telling you it's November 3rd. Get November 3rd out of your mind. That's most important for owning your vote and getting your vote in there. But the presidency is going to come down to an absolute fracas, I happen to think, quasi-civil war, right? And this is what just I'm picking up from the left-wing analysis of the Transition Integrity Project. It's going to come down to the inauguration day and hours before 12 noon on the 20th of January, the year of our Lord 2021. So don't think this fight's only going to be another 50 days. You've got the more intense fight, I think, starts on the evening of November 3rd. Raheem, back to you. I want everybody in #WarRoomPandemic. I want everybody in the live stream. Your number one duty right now is to push this material out, to be linking to National Pulse, to be linking to Revolver, to be linking to all these stories that are coming up. We're posting stories nonstop on our website to push this out. If you go look at Drudge right now, it's a complete and total joke. It's like, nothing's happening. This must be pushed out. People must start to understand this. We're not conspiracy theory guys here. We're saying it's all in the open, but you have to understand it. And that's why we're going through so many of these concepts and these ideas, what I call the nomenclature. We're talking about process, and we're going to get into critical path. Raheem, back to you and Darren Beattie.
Just before we bring back Darren in, I know Jack Max, you want to jump in here?
One of the things, and Darren, maybe you can talk to this. You see these people in media, you see these people like Facebook, et cetera, talking about how they're not going to get involved. The reality is they're deeply involved, right? They're pretending that they're not involved, and they're sort of, it seems it's they're participating in this gaslighting by the Democratic Party, proposing all of these potential bad outcomes that are going to occur, preparing people for the chaos that they're threatening us with. I would also like to put a parallel between the CCP and the DNC. Both organizations constantly threaten their opposition with chaos should you not comply with their wishes. But again, I just find it to be a farce that Zuckerberg is claiming he's not going to be involved while getting his hands all the way up to the elbow in this process.
Well, I think as well, Darren, I don't even know if it's Zuckerberg saying he's not going to be involved. He's like saying, almost admitting that we will get involved where it benefits, the side that we want to benefit, right? They will add, quote, I think he said, informational context.
He said he's going to be very involved. He said right there, they're not going to call it for a candidate. That means Donald Trump. Trust me, if Biden's up in a blowout on November 3rd, they'll be calling it. He's laying out the whole. They're trying to give themselves cover right now.
Yeah.
Legal cover and societal cover. That's all. He's going to be up to his neck in this thing. He's already up to his neck. He just said it right there. It's obvious what they're doing, and they're being pretty bold about it, I think.
I guess that Jared Kushner dinner didn't work out so well in the long run. Let's take it back to Darren Beattie here. Darren, pick us up where you. I like Steve smirking at my comment. I can see it. Let's get back to Darren Beattie. Darren, tell us more about your man.
Yes. Okay. So just really quickly about the Facebook clip, which is absolutely explosive. But we already have a framework within which to understand it, and that is the full court press, the convergence we see in the media to see this idea in our minds that there's going to be a contested election scenario, and that Trump, if he doesn't step out of office precisely when they say he should, he's an authoritarian who justifies measures that the U.S. government and the national security apparatus normally reserve for authoritarians overseas, particularly in Eastern Europe, namely the color revolution model. I'd like to read for your audience a couple passages from the color revolution playbook that I mentioned, authored by this character, Norm Eisen. Norm Eisen is not only a legal hatchet man, he was Obama's ethics czar, believe it or not, but he's subsequently made a name for himself as the author of all kinds of impeachment articles. He's the co-counsel. He is the lead lawfare expert who has been running a lot of Trump associates down through bombarding them with lawsuits and so forth. And by the way, he floated this idea of lawfare and impeachment in particular before Trump even took office. So that gives you a sense that it was a foregone conclusion. They just found a pretext. Let me read something. This is from Michael McFowell, who runs down the criteria that are ripe for color revolution. One of those criteria relevant to the Zuckerberg clip is, quote, independent media to inform citizens about a falsified vote. This follows a criterion before it, an ability to quickly drive home the point that voting results were falsified. This is from another color revolution expert, and of course, never Trump guy, Michael McDowell, who was the ambassador to Russia under Obama. Again, all these people had diplomatic posts under Obama, sometimes even under Trump. They're familiar with the color revolution playbook. They've used it in Eastern Europe. Now they're using it against Trump. Let's turn to our fellow Norm Eisen, whom he mentioned. He, more than anybody, embodies this nexus, the same people, the same playbook. He talks about one of the most famous color revolutions, the so-called Orange Revolution in Ukraine. Quick quote, Ukraine's nonviolent Orange Revolution of 2004 helped to bring the democratically elected Viktor Yushchenko to power after widespread election fraud. Let's skip to the general playbook bullet point in the instruction. Increase election monitoring capacity and, quote, be prepared to use electoral abuse evidence as the basis for reform advocacy. That seems a little familiar. Let's look at another bullet point. Opposition leaders, in this case, the people that they're agitating in order to effect color revolution, opposition leaders may also choose to pursue more extreme institutional measures available to them. For example, impeachment processes. I just mentioned that Norm Eisen is the chief legal counsel for impeachment, and he said he would be in the Brock memo. His organization is called CREW. He's in the memo, and his task was undermining, potentially overthrowing the 2016 election through impeachment lawfare. So there's impeachment processes, votes of no confidence, and recall referenda, and or deploy extra institutional tools. For example, protests, strikes, or boycotts. This is from the Color Revolution manual. And so it's very clear this specific combination of generating doubt as to legitimacy of the election combined with agitating huge mobs of civil disobedience, mass protests, which are quote unquote peaceful, about as peaceful as we've seen playing out before our eyes on the news. There's nothing peaceful about it. Peaceful protesters is a term of art. It's part of the playbook. This is what we're seeing right now. It's a color revolution. It's exactly the playbook they've run overseas. They're running it right here. That's the most important thing the listeners need to take away. Yes, it's a coup, but it's a very specific type of coup, and it's a specific type of coup refined by a certain network of people. These are not simply Democrats. This is a vast swath of our country's national security apparatus.
How much many of these guys are working on the transition integrity project? Isn't Norm Eisen one of these national security experts they've got on there? Any associated with this movement?
Yes. I mean, that's it. That's his tie-in here, is that not only is this guy the legal hatchet man, the chief impeachment co-counsel to the impeachment, not only is he the author of literally the Color Revolution playbook that he calls the playbook, he, of course, is a participant in these ridiculous war games that, of course, demonstrate that the only way we could have a peaceful outcome in the election is if Biden wins by a landslide. He's the sort of silent participant, and this piece at revolver.news, which really connects everything into the broad framework, and I think people really need to go to revolver.news, read the whole thing. Some of it's complicated, but it's absolutely necessary to understand. This guy, Norm Eisen, participant in these war games, but he's longtime legal hatchet man. He checks off the box of having had a diplomatic post related to Eastern Europe. He was ambassador to Czech under Obama, and Czech, of course, had the Velvet Revolution. People can look that up, semi-color revolution. And
Darren, we've got a minute left here.
Yeah, stay over for the next segment. Raheem, why don't you take us out? I want everybody jumping in here. Already the voices, I'm hearing people sign up for as election officials. It's amazing. You're the best audience in the world. You're the most powerful audience in the world. You've already made huge changes in the world. regarding the CCP in the United States of America. Raheem, why don't you take us out? Darren Beattie will stay over and get a quick hit on him in the next segment.
Yeah, Darren. I mean, this is incredible stuff, and I want to point out as well some of the other reporting that we've been looking at in the last couple of weeks since we first broke this story about the Transition Integrity Project. Rosa Brooks, the person who's in charge of it, recently gave an interview to a podcast called, drumroll please, Deep State Radio. We'll be back with more with Darren Beattie, Stephen K. Bannon after this break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. Raheem Kassam, Jack Maxey here on Capitol Hill, broadcasting live. It's Wednesday, September the 9th, year of our Lord 2020. Darren Beattie and Stephen K. Bannon joining us down the line. Steve?
Yeah, Darren, real quickly, the hashtag War Room Pandemic, the live stream, everything's on fire right now. We know that everybody's got to go to National Pulse, watch National Pulse in the afternoon, go to the site, go to Revolver, all these Virginia Star, all these great emerging websites, also Gateway Pundit, all of our allies. But what can an American citizen do? We're going to be more on and talk about nomenclature, critical path process. But what can an American citizen do today to assist in stopping this coup against the president, this plot against the president?
Great question. I think, first of all, we do have to acknowledge knowledge is power. I think the most comprehensive account of what's going on with this fellow Norm Eisen, go to revolver.news, read the story, share it with everyone. There's a playbook. There's a playbook to the color revolution. It's not just a vague coup. It's a very specific type of revolution that in some ways requires the public to be ignorant of what's going on. We understand the playbook. They've represented it before our very eyes. Just as they're making everyone wear masks, their own mask is slipping. The mask of the power structure in the United States is slipping as we move from a persuasion model to coercion model. I think everyone needs to get involved, stop them from stealing the vote, organize, share the information with everyone, and understand precisely what is going on when they tell you that there's a contested election. They are trying to move the democratic decision apparatus from the polls to the courts and the institutions they control. It's anything but democratic. They will use that term to fool you. It's anything but democratic. Every American needs to understand that these figures in the national security state, not just Democrats, this is bigger than that. This is the national security state versus the American people. They're going to do everything in their power to ensure that the American people will never meddle in their own elections again.
Darren Beattie, thank you very much. Looking forward to having you back on here in the next couple of days. Just amazing, a revelatory piece up in the Revolver. Raheem, you guys at National Pulse, your team at National Pulse have been on this from the very beginning. You kind of broke this story with Bill McGinley and others talking about this over a month ago, or I think a month and a half, 2 months ago. Where do you think we stand now? We've got about 2 minutes to replay. Our theme here is to take down the CCP. By popular demand, we're going to have it back. But Raheem, talk to me about where we go from here.
You're 2 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, away from me dancing again, so look forward to that. Steve, this now is... Okay, so I have a slightly different view on this, I think, to a lot of people out there. But I will constantly remind people that we have fought this kind of legal and lawfare battle in the United Kingdom ever since we voted to leave the European Union. It's almost the same kind of playbook that we're seeing here. We had to take it to the courts, and then the higher courts, and the Supreme Courts, and the European courts, and the whole thing dragged on for years. Luckily, the United States has a constitution, and the constitution will inform us as to when the president needs to be decided on by, and that's January the 20th. It's by the date of the inauguration. But now we have to look at where this is going in terms of the legal mechanisms. And remember, they called it a street fight. In the Transition Integrity Project document, they called it a street fight. They're the ones who are threatening mobs. In one of their scenarios, 4 million people took to the streets for the Democrats. So all of those things are in play here. And we're studying where the Democrats now are going to take this next. I believe very, very heavily litigious, obviously, on this as well. But also, the riots you've seen in Portland, Kenosha, and beyond have just been a warm-up for them.
Yeah, Zuckerberg said that. Zuckerberg goes, "Oh, we got to, I want to warn about street violence." They're going to perpetuate it, and that's why Facebook and actually Fox are going to be two of the key players here. Raheem, back to you to take us out here. I want everybody in hashtag War Room Pandemic, everybody in the live stream, tell us how you're volunteering, tell us how you're getting engaged, tell us what you're going to do to stand up and defend this republic if we can keep it.
We got the music.
Let me tell you what I've been through, baby. Lived a life that was hella unfair. Seen things that been driving me crazy. In a country where the leaders don't care. Didn't think we had the courage to change it. Tore it down and they weren't prepared. Everything that they kept us from saying. Now we're talking and they better be scared. Take from us. Tell us what and who to love. Swear I finally had enough. It's time to rise above. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Follow me and I'ma set us free. Take down the CCP. I said, hey, down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Communism's dead to me because it killed our families. The CCP.
Communism sucks, hard for me to give. Try to tell them and they try to keep it on the hush. Middle finger up, turn into a fist. They wanna keep the poor so they never rich. If you wanna see the future, look into the past. Been a century of silence, we gon' take it back. I'm just stating facts, tell you how it is. Ain't no way to change if we don't resist.
Take from us. Tell us what and who to love. Swear I finally had enough. It's time to rise above. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Follow me and I'ma set us free. Take down the CCP. I said, take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Communism's dead to me because it killed our families. CCP.
这是你我维护正义的必须，这是你我维护正义的必须。
Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Follow me and I'ma set us free. Take